approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito del presente. E tutto questo esiste anche grazie a te.
Buonasera.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this traditional appointment of the events proposed by the Rimini meeting. It's a tradition because for many, many years, Joseph Weiler, one of the greatest men of law, I will not dwell on all his publications, on all his accomplishments, because it would take too long, comes here to share with us, living his Jewish faith, a path of knowledge of the Bible. And this is even more meaningful this year because we all are aware of the fragile situation in Palestine and in the Holy Land, which gives us the opportunity to comment on the choices of the Israeli government, but also to fight against the hostility against the Jewish people and unjustified, shameful hatred towards the Jewish people, their mission, their very existence. As the sign of the promise kept by God forever. We, and by we I mean the Christian community, we listen to what is said with the same attention and gratitude towards a greater friend who accompanies us in our path. The theme that has been chosen is in line with the theme of the meeting. Ancient and modern buildings in the Bible, with the verse, Matthew 21, my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers. Yesterday, Eric Varn talked about the first building in the Bible is that of the first city built by Cain, and then the extravagant enterprise that we know as Bible. God, together with Abraham, Abraham's calling follows the moment of the Tower of Babel. So the God that identifies with a man, with a people in the desert, and appears in a tent, very temporary dwelling. So why? Once the people of Jesus has arrived in the promised land, so much care is given to the building of the temple. What is the temple? Why is the temple criticized by the prophet Jeremiah for the way it is used? Why is it destroyed and never rebuilt again? Why God the Almighty needs a place, a dwelling? Why? Christians who follow God, who says, I'm the new temple, built over the centuries beautiful temples, at least in the West, that are, well, totally empty. Well, all this leads us to what might seem a secondary topic, that is at the center of the religious experience of the Jewish people and of Christianity. So, well, all these issues will be dealt with in the next hour by Weiler, and I'd already like to thank you for being here.
Ti siano graditi le parole della mia bocca davanti a te.
In front of you is the thought of my heart, my Lord. Welcome to all of you who love the Bible. I love you. We are not many, but we are excellent. And I'd like to repeat something. I know some of you were at the event Friday. It is important to repeat what I read from the Bible on Friday about the situation in the Middle East.
Il Signore diceva,
And God said, do I have to hide from Abraham what I am about to do, whilst Abraham will have to become a powerful, great nation? And people will say, blessed are the nations of the earth. I chose him for him to oblige his children and his family after him to observe or to follow the path of God. And what is the path of God? To act with justice and right. Abraham went towards the Lord and said, will you really destroy the good with the evil? Or if there are at least 50 good people, will you kill them? Will you not forgive that place in the name of those 50 right people who are there? You want to have the good people die with the evil people. Maybe the judge of the whole earth won't put justice into practice, and I identify as a human being and as a Jew. I identify myself in these words by Abraham. I want to add something that I didn't say on Friday. It is important to protest when we are faced with injustice. We cannot remain silent. But even with this criticism, we should not treat good people and evil people at the same time. Not all Muslims are Hamas, not all the Jews are those who want this war. We have to remember this.
Ora, come sapete,
As you know, every year I try to give a lecture on the Bible that in a way is in line with the theme of the meeting. Last year it was, well, easier, the Promised Land. And there was a bigger audience. And then I saw this word, brick. What do bricks have to do with the Bible? So when I started to reflect upon this theme, I found out that I could actually give an interesting lecture on this topic.
quanto è la prima volta nella Bibbia che si parla?
When are bricks mentioned for the first time in the Bible? In the history of Cain and Abel. It is a very interesting history. Cain was the first martyr, and his penance was terrible. But if we go on reading this chapter, we find out there is another lesson, the mercy of the Lord, and the possibility even for a murder to be redempted, because this is the text you see on the slide. Cain married, had children, a family, and his children, the children of the first martyr, are the fathers of our civilization, of our culture. The first son became the builder of a city, and here comes the theme of bricks. To build a city, you need bricks. But when they talk about the other children, they say he was the father of those who lived under a tent. The brother was called Lubal, and was the father of all the players of the flute, the father of the art, of the music. Zilla will be the blacksmith of all those who work with the copper and iron, so the industry. All these three examples are given as a positive element. So the first indication of the Bible tells us that to build buildings is not wrong. When people say cities are the source of all that is evil in the world, this is not true, because this son of Cain is mentioned together with his brothers in the Bible. And now, let's go to see the first real reference, that is the Babel Tower. The whole of the earth had one single language. They all used the same words. Migrating from the east, the people would arrive in a land and they told each other, come, let's become bricks, or let's create bricks and cook them, and let's use them and to build something. Then they said, let's build a city and a tower whose top will touch the sky. Let's make a name for ourselves. But God didn't like that, we know that. And he sent all these people, he scattered all these people all over the world. I don't think the language they spoke was Italian, so let's thank God for the Italian language. It would be really a shame if there was no such a language, so beautiful as it is. But the question is, what was the sin of those who built this tower? It's not clear, because it really looked like a human need to build something. There are some hypotheses. The first, they wanted to be there, to stay there. The Lord's commandment was to scatter and fill the whole of the earth, whereas they wanted to be all together in the same place. Rome in itself is not enough. We human beings, we believers, we have to be everywhere. So, well, there was already something there that went against the plan of God. And then they say, let's make a name for ourselves. Why is this a problem? Every one of us wants to make a name for themselves. So let's go back to the book of Isaiah. What does the prophet say? Because this is what the Lord says. To those who respect my Sabbath, they prefer what I like and are solid in our alliance. I will give in my house, within my walls, a place and a name better than sons and daughters. I will give them an eternal name that will be never erased. So there is a form of arrogance. The only important name, according to the Bible, is the name given to those who follow God. So here, when they talk about building the tower, they don't even mention God. So it's just human ambition. It's just human arrogance. So this is why the words of the prophet show why they were wrong in doing this. And now I wonder, what kind of contemporary lesson can we draw from the story of the Babel Tower? How can it be relevant today? In order to answer this question, I have to go back to that verse that says, the all of the earth had just one language and the same words. So what common language do we have today? It's not English. Anyone has an idea? Science is the common language, because in the story of the Babel Tower, we see science for the first time. That is to say, these people don't take nature as it is. They convert through science. They decided to produce bricks. So this is thus a scientific and industrial process. And this is the common language of our age. If you're Chinese or Italian or anything else, science speaks just one language. The same way, there is an invitation to arrogance, the wrong belief that science can create solutions to anything and can explain the human condition. This is the contemporary version of the Babel Tower. So the arrogance that human beings have all the answers. We as believers are convinced that there are some truth that we can find in the religion of Abraham, and this is what sheds light to the real truth. Science does have a very important role to play, this is true, but it cannot provide all the answers. So to believe that science does give all the answers is being as arrogant as those who wanted to build the tower. Let's go on. And we're now at the story of the temple. Let's read John 2. He's more explicit than Matthew. The Easter was close. Jesus arrived in Jerusalem, and he found in the temple people selling cattle, sheep, and Jesus sent away everyone outside of the temple. He threw the money of the traders, and to those who sold doves said, you have to take these animals away. Don't turn the house of my father into a market, and destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days. They replied, it has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you are going to raise it in 3 days? But he was talking of the temple of his body. Jesus becomes the temple after 3 days. So this is a problem and a challenge. Why? Because on the one hand, the lesson is that you don't need buildings and bricks to follow God. Jesus is everywhere. God is everywhere. He doesn't need buildings. But history and the Bible say something else. So we start to see the spiritual value of buildings, real buildings. As Father Pino said, in the history of the Church, in spite of what Jesus said, there are beautiful buildings. beautiful temples. We don't have a picture of the Temple of Jerusalem, but we have the modern version. Many different versions, actually. Another one and yet another one. You do recognize these buildings, I believe. One more, this for the Jewish people, and then behind for the Muslims. So why? What is the value of a place, of a dwelling, of a temple, of a building, like those we saw in the pictures in our life, while we are trying to imitate God? In order to give an answer to this question, let's go back to the Old Testament. This is something that I say often. I prefer to call it AT, Authentic Testament, but I'm kidding, I'm just kidding. So let's go to the book of the Exodus. God told Moses, tell the Israelites to bring me gifts. You shall accept gifts for me, for every person whose heart is moved. And these are the gifts that you shall accept from them: gold, silver, and copper, and yarns, and so on. And then he says, with this they will build a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. So this is not actually the correct translation of the original text, because the precise translation doesn't say I will dwell among them. The right translation is I will dwell inside them, inside their souls. It's not like the Greek temples, where people believe that the God lives inside the temple. Here, God says, you build a temple and I will live or dwell in your souls. So this is what we have to understand. But we already see that there is a rejection of the idea that the Almighty lives in the temple. The Almighty says, you build a temple and I can live inside of you. Then we will go back to this. And then there is something very special, weird in a way. The Ten Commandments, they are less than a chapter, whereas the instructions to build the temple are very long. 3 chapters, long chapters, very detailed. And here you have an example. You can read for yourself. The detail in the instructions is very specific. The measurements are given very precisely. And then it goes on for 1, 2, 3 chapters. It's unbelievable. It is not all. if you go to see the chapter number 25 of the Exodus, you'll see that after these 3 chapters with the instructions, the plans of the architect on how to build the temple, there are another 3 chapters of what has been done. This is a bit strange, actually. But at least, to begin with, I can say that it gives us the impression that the temple is important in the version or in the vision of the Bible, while otherwise why would waste, so to speak, 6 chapters of the Bible to give the exact measures to build the temple. So this at least gives the idea that the existence of this temple is something important. So we need to understand why there are all these details. It would have been enough to say, build a beautiful temple. But the most important question is the value of the temple. Not only of the ancient temple. This is why I showed you all these buildings. So what is the value of these places today? These are modern temples. Maybe someone in the audience has some ideas. In your religious life, what kind of importance do you give to these temples? Why, in your experience, the Bible seems to have been right in insisting on the importance of these buildings, of these bricks, not just in a figurative sense. Real bricks. So let's see if there is someone who has an idea. I have 5. But before explaining my ideas on the importance of the temple, of the bricks, of the buildings, I would like to listen to you. Is it possible? Please follow me. Don't disappoint me.
Non c'è neanche un santo in questo Sodoma e Gomorra. Dai, per favore.
No one wants to say anything? We need a microphone, though.
Usate questo, se no.
You can use this microphone.
Puoi anche avanzare, cioè...
You can come forward.
No, microfono.
Credo che l'accenno che
I think that what Professor Weiler said calls back to the faith of the Christian, my own testimony, by building with an effort, with even the death of those who built these temples. The reason of the art enriched by the faith in Christ. This is why we have these buildings, because someone believed, had faith, and built with their lives and their blood, dedicating this to God, rather than to build great works. Are there any other ideas? There's no right answer.
Fate una frase, non siamo...
Please, just one simple, straightforward question. Gaudí, the cathedral by Gaudí, that is the place where he lives as maker, as creator, where every single brick acknowledges the connection between the earth and the sky. So the Sagrada Familia is maybe the symbol of what you're talking about. Can we have another one? Then I'll say what I think. Well, I think this is a sign and a place. I think about the churches that Pope Paul VI had built in the rural areas of Milan, when we talk about modern temples. Without those churches, people that went to live there wouldn't have had a place to pray. Thank you. Well, I think that the first part is that religion is not only an individual religion. On one hand, there is an individual religion, and there is a relationship between the single person and God. But without a community, there is no Christianity. Without a community, there is no Jewish religion. In the Ancient Testament, we talk to the people, not to the single person. And Jesus always says, you, plural, the people. So the idea of the community is central. So where do we feel this community? So that the people of the community can gather, can pray together. The temple, the cathedral, and even the smallest church is a brick building that can support this feeling of community. It is not necessary, but it helps, because that's where people meet, gather, and this is one of the values of the temple.
So here we understand why the Holy Bible insisted on this idea of temple. Then there is another idea. And the Christians attach more importance to that than the Jews. The importance of beauty. Beauty is not does not only have to do with aesthetics. Beauty is a gift of God. Beauty has a spiritual element. Where can we celebrate beauty if not in a building? It is not by random that in any cathedral, in any church, there are frescoes, there are works of art. Is it just by chance that Michelangelo stayed there for many years to enhance the spiritual element of beauty in faith? So the world culture comes from cult. Culture, beauty which is essential. And here we start understanding what we have just read about the Old Testament. Gold and silver is not just for wealth, but this is related to beauty. As in, you have to celebrate beauty, you have to show beauty. And you can do that in this building. And then there is also a political element. Wow, religion and politics? Do they go hand in hand? Unfortunately, sometimes they do. But what is the political element here? And this can be seen in the King's Book when Solomon built the first temple. We made a lecture on this a couple of years ago. The Pentateuch was against the kingdom of gods, but the people went up to Samuel saying, "We want a king for Israel." Samuel said, "No, it's a mistake, it's a mistake." But in the end, the people wanted, and so he chose a son, and then David. But in the Bible, in the biblical thinking, the king is God. And the terrestrial king makes a palace. So if he makes a palace, is it possible that God, the king of everyone, is not making a temple for himself? So there is a political element here in order to recall people that even when there is monarchy, even when there is David and Solomon and all the other sinners, the real God, the real king is only God and God himself. And this is a political and sociological element. In the mind of people, the palace of a king is the symbol for the kingdom. So there is a political element to show, to recall that, yes, there is David and Solomon, but let's not forget that the real king is God. Therefore, the temple is important. And then there is yet another political element in the King's Book. The others who have not reached God yet have to respect Abraham's religion, Judaism, and then Christianity. So from a political perspective, it's somewhat strange, but the King of Kings should have a palace, and therefore Solomon built a palace that did not exist elsewhere on earth. I'm not sure about Solomon, why he did that. Maybe to show that it was he, but actually to show that the King of Kings also has his own palace. And then there is the idea of dwelling. Please, can you say something about that? The building as a house. What is the spiritual thinking behind that? It's a house. Do you want to say something about it? This idea, at the beginning of Christianity, in the early Christianity, because the first temples were actually houses where people used to live. In the house, people were celebrating the Eucharist. But this is present throughout the story of Jewish people. God becomes family. God enters the life of people. So this is the abolishment of the classic idea between the sacred and the profane. Profane is the one outside the temple, whereas the God entering history makes everything sacred makes a sense for everything. What you said, quoting Isaiah, I will live inside you. This is what you said. Correct. Let me add something, and on a personal note. I was lucky enough because some of you celebrated Shabbat with me. So we're talking about temple, gold, silver, but the idea of the temple and also the idea of the house is related to religious practice. In our customs, not just in my family, on Saturday, with no exception whatsoever, either you are invited to go to somebody's house, to your neighbor's house, or you are inviting people to your own house. And that enhances the idea of the house, of a dwelling, as a key element in faith, in your personal faith. And the idea of temple is not just related to that cathedral, but each one of our houses, has to be a small temple. So the idea of temple is celebrating the value of the house, of the family, of neighbors, of guests and friends. This is not just social customs, but there is also a spiritual dimension in that. And that also comes from the idea of temple. So this is my fourth idea. Then there is one last idea, which is somewhat challenging, but I'll try to explain.
Ecco. Il Signore parlò a Mosè e gli disse: quando per il censimento farai la rassegna degli israeliti, ciascuno di essi pagherà al Signore il riscatto della sua vita all'atto del censimento, perché non li colpisce un flagello in occasione del loro censimento. Chiunque verrà sottoposto al censimento pagherà un mezzo siclo, in ebraico moderno shekel, mezzo shekel. Un piccola nota. Voi è veramente semplice.
When you go for the census, you will have to analyze the Israelites, and you can read the slide. Why? Around temples, there were currency exchanges. Well, these Jews always have to do with money. This is what an anti-Semitic person would say. Because each one who came to the temple had to give half a shekel. Each person going through the census over 20 should pay an omen for the Lord. The rich will not give more, and the poor will not give less than half a shekel to give an omen to God. And then it will take the money and the ransom received by the Israelites and will use it to the service of people and to maintain the temple. This is the principle of equality. The rich will not give more, the poor will not give less. We cannot tell somebody, I gave more than you did, so I'm much more worthy than you are. This is the idea of equality. And when you enter the temple, we are all equal. The rich and the poor, Father Pino and Weiler, we're all equal inside the temple, which is a place of equality among people created in the image of God. So I am really struck by that. Each one has to participate in the maintenance of the temple, the place of God, but on an equal footing. No one can say, I gave more than you did. You gave less. And the deepest meaning is the idea of equality, which is essential in front of God. It can be an old guy just like me. It can be somebody very young and strong. It can be a professor or somebody else doing another job. When you enter the temple, we are all equal. Now, my question to you is the following. Where else in public life, well, you have the rich people, the poor people, there are important people, there are people who are less important. In our contemporary life, in our modern life, where else there's a place where everybody is equal when you enter because we're equal in front of God? And this comes from the same chapter, the Exodus. The rich will not give more, the poor will not give more, because in front of God, we're all equal. And to me, this is moving. Now, let's sum up. We said, chapter after chapter, the importance of the temple is explained. Even too much. And we've given 5 answers to that. Why is that? Sorry, I got lost. The first idea that to me is essential is the sense of community, the place, the building, the cathedral, a small church, a small synagogue. That creates community. And here you can feel that you belong to a community. For that, you need to have a house, you need to have a building where you can touch, speak, pray together. And sometimes I am sitting in the synagogue in the last row telling jokes. So this is also important. So, community. Then second idea, and here I'm quite envious, the importance of beauty. How can we show that we are adoring the Lord with beauty? This is what Christian buildings do. Beauty is evidence for Christian buildings. People come from all over the world to see this beauty. So beauty has a spiritual and religious element. Then there's a political element, as we said. making people recall something. I want you to say that to Giorgia Meloni. Maybe the Prime Minister is important, but there is somebody more important than the Prime Minister. So there is something recalling people that there is something which is more important than day-to-day politics. And then there is the idea of the house dwelling, that the house, that the temple is a house. Be it a poor house or a rich house, this is important for the religious identity of the person. And you have to share your house with others. You have to invite and be invited. And last but not least, the sense of equality. You enter the temple, and this is why the Bible said the poor will not give more, the rich will not give, the poor will not give less, the rich will not give more, because in front of God, everyone is equal. Thank you very much to all of you. And everything stemmed from the wonderful idea of the meeting, bricks, talking about bricks. Bricks, look. Even bricks can have a spiritual element. Thank you very much again.
Ringraziamo.
Thank you to Joseph Weiler for giving us this food for thought. Reminding us that in the present, which can be a desert, there is evidence that the person cannot grow without a place, educating through beauty. Through a house. Through the fact of being together with others, where we become united, where our difference is unity. So all that can be related to our own history, to our beginnings, to moments of crisis. There is a journey of construction, as in we have to spend our life to realize that we are not the lords of the universe. If we acknowledge the Lord, we can become protagonists of a great story. That story started thousands of years ago and still continues today. And it continues in places, be they small or big. This is a drop that, as Giussani always used to say, one drop is enough to change the pH of evil. Thank you very much for this session. Let me say in the end, let me talk about the small brick that each one of us can contribute to the meeting, not just by being here, not just their own sacrifice to be here, but you can also give a practical contribution to support the meeting. Any contribution, whatever you can, is welcome, and is just a new brick to continue building together this place of meeting, of beauty, and of hope. Everywhere you will find the Red Heart stations with the right now, and you can also deduct your donation from your taxes. Thank you very much for your presence, for your attention. Thank you very much to Joseph, who will leave to go back to the US in very few hours. Let me add something. On Friday, in a very trivial way, I advertised my new book, Ancora Cristiana l'Europa. Is Europe Still Christian? And I forgot to say that all the copyright is going to be given to Communion and Liberation. So this is my own contribution to the meeting.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
Qualcuno che si impegna, che si
che
batte.
approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito del presente. E tutto questo esiste anche grazie a te.